Welcome, dear listener, to a journey into a quiet corner of American history, a story that unfolds gently, like the turning pages of an old book. As you settle in, perhaps nestling deeper into your pillows, allow your thoughts to soften and your breath to deepen. We're not here for thrills or frights, but to observe, to ponder, and to let a fascinating, if sometimes unsettling, narrative lull you into a state of serene contemplation, guiding you towards a restful sleep. Tonight we will explore the curious and profoundly quiet occurrences reported within an unassuming duplex in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. A tale that weaves through the fabric of a family's life, transforming the ordinary into something more. It's a story whispered through time, a historical account of a family's quest for peace amidst bewildering phenomena, one that ultimately asks us to consider the subtle boundaries between the known and the unknown. Our narrative begins in a place that epitomized tranquility, West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Envision a small, sleepy town, nestled in the scenic landscapes of northeastern Pennsylvania, a place where the days unfolded with a comforting rhythm, where children played safely in the streets, and neighbors knew each other by name. It was the sort of community where, for generations, doors were often left unlocked, a testament to a collective sense of security and peaceful living. In such a setting, the extraordinary was, by its very nature, an anomaly, something rarely encountered, much less deeply understood. This was the backdrop for the Smurl family, a close-knit group whose lives were about to intertwine with the inexplicable. At the heart of this story were Jack and Janet Smurl, a devoted couple, and their 4 young daughters, Dawn, Heather, and the twins, Shannon and Karen. Their lives were an embodiment of quiet American domesticity. Jack Smurl, a steady and diligent man, dedicated his long hours as a technician at the Tops chewing gum plant, providing for his family with unwavering commitment. Janet, his wife, possessed a warm and reserved demeanor, her days filled with the gentle rhythms of raising their daughters, nurturing their home with care and quiet dedication. The family held their Catholic faith close, finding solace and structure within the Immaculate Conception parish, just a short distance from their new home. Adding to the warmth of their family circle were Jack's elderly parents, John and Mary, whose presence further cemented the deep bonds that held the Smurls together. Their decision to move into the duplex on Chase Street, the very epicenter of our story, was born not of ambition or a restless desire for change, but from a profound necessity, a quiet upheaval that had touched many lives in the region. Rewind your mind gently to the year 1972, a time when Hurricane Agnes, a force of nature, unleashed its powerful fury upon Wilkes-Barre and its surrounding towns. The waters rose, submerging entire neighborhoods, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. For the Smurl family, like so many others, the storm was a relentless tide that swept away nearly everything they owned. Their beloved home, once a sanctuary, was rendered unlivable, a shell of its former self. Thankfully, amidst the widespread destruction, no one in their family was physically harmed, a blessing for which they were profoundly grateful, even as they grappled with the enormity of their loss. With heavy hearts, they packed what little they could salvage and left, embarking on a quiet search for a new beginning. It was in August of 1973 that their search led them to an appealing discovery, a duplex on Chase Street, nestled in the tranquil nearby town of West Pittston. This was a place with 3 stories, 8 bedrooms, and an unfinished basement, a structure that, to the discerning eye, clearly presented itself as a fixer-upper. Built in 1896, it carried the weight of its age in its very bones, promising both charm and considerable effort. It was Jack's parents, John and Mary, who proposed a practical solution, one that would keep the family close. They would purchase the entire duplex. John and Mary would make one side their home, and Jack and Janet, along with their 4 girls, would occupy the other. This arrangement, they believed, offered not only a shared future, but also a way to pool their resources and rebuild their lives together. With this decision, the Smurl family embarked on a quiet labor of love. They poured their collective time, their precious savings, and their deepest affections into the old duplex. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, as they scraped away layers of old paint, applied fresh coats to rejuvenate the walls, carefully rewired the ancient electrical systems, and patched up the weathered bones of the place. It was a painstaking process, a quiet act of devotion, transforming the old structure into a warm and welcoming home. West Pittston, once a thriving mining town, had seen its prosperity wane with the closure of the mines, but it remained a solid, dependable place, an ideal environment, they believed, to raise their daughters, to foster their growth in a community steeped in tradition and quiet resilience. As they first walked through the rooms of the duplex, before the renovations began in earnest, everything appeared quite ordinary, unremarkable in its quiet stillness. Yet, what the Smurls did not know, as they embarked on this new chapter, was that their chosen home carried with it a quiet, almost spectral, reputation around the town. Whispers, like the rustling of dry leaves, had circulated among the locals for years. Some reported glimpses of unsettling faces appearing to stare out from the windows of the seemingly empty house as they passed by, fleeting images that lingered in the mind. Police, in response to these peculiar reports of disturbances, would make occasional visits to the address, only to find nothing amiss, no obvious signs of intrusion, just the profound silence of an unoccupied dwelling. Those who lived on the street spoke of odd, unidentifiable noises emanating from the house at all hours of the day and night, faint echoes that defied explanation. And then, there was a particularly persistent rumor, a quiet suggestion that the previous inhabitants had, perhaps, engaged in practices of witchcraft within its very walls. Was there any truth to these hushed tales, or were they merely the charming if unsettling embroidery of small-town folklore? The Smurls, in their quiet anticipation of a peaceful life, were soon to find out, though they would not seek such answers directly. After the arduous work of moving in and settling their lives, things seemed to gently fall into place for the Smurl family. Jack and Janet, with their friendly and respectable demeanor, quietly integrated themselves into the fabric of the community. They were known for their warmth, their quiet dedication to family, and their respectful interactions with neighbors. Life flowed smoothly, with a comforting predictability. Jack even received a well-deserved promotion at work, a quiet affirmation of his diligent efforts. The girls embarked on their educational journey at the local Catholic school, their laughter and energy filling the classrooms. The family, as was their custom, joined the Immaculate Conception Parish, a spiritual anchor just down the road. And in this gentle unfolding of daily life, it seemed no one felt the immediate need to share the quiet, unsettling rumors about their new house, the murmurs of its supposed haunting. For a time the family seemed profoundly content, settled in their new routine, until, almost imperceptibly, the quiet contentment began to fray. Something, a presence subtle and unseen, had already made itself profoundly at home on Chase Street, a silent resident woven into the very structure of the duplex. The activity, at its outset, was remarkably minor, exquisitely subtle, almost imperceptible. In those early months, it was easy, almost natural, to attribute these small oddities to the venerable age of the house itself. After all, it was over 75 years old, a structure of dry wood and rusted pipes, prone to the creaks and groans that accompany time. Drafts, like unseen visitors, would slip beneath doors, whispering through the old frames. Noises, the natural echoes of an aging dwelling, reverberated throughout the house, sounds easily dismissed as the ordinary settling of an old home. But just a few months after their quiet arrival on Chase Street, the Smurls began to notice, with a growing, subtle unease, that certain things felt undeniably off. The first occurrence, a quiet, almost domestic mystery, unfolded with a stain. Across the brand-new living room rug, a beautiful piece Mary had purchased for her side of the duplex. A dark, oily, and inexplicably wet mark appeared. Mary, in her quiet surprise, examined it closely, her brow furrowed with mild bewilderment. Where, she must have wondered, did this come from? This was not here before. It is a brand new rug. John and Mary, with a calm practicality, set about cleaning it, scrubbing away the mysterious substance. Yet, 2 days later, the dark stain reappeared, as if refusing to be erased. They continued their quiet attempts to scrub it away, but each time, with a quiet insistence, it would always return, leaving them with a persistent, unsolved mystery. The dark substance remained unidentified, a small yet persistent anomaly. The renovations on the duplex, a slow and deliberate process, continued for some time. Yet, even after carefully replacing pipes, the family observed a peculiar phenomenon. New pipes would mysteriously burst, springing leaks in unexpected places, as if an unseen hand were testing their endurance. Tools, the humble instruments of Jack's diligent work around the house, hammers, paintbrushes, screwdrivers, began a curious vanishing act, disappearing mid-project, only to reappear days later, in an unlikely spot, perhaps in the dusty attic, or, more disquietingly, in the dark, seldom visited basement, where no one in the family recalled having been. Jack and John, in their quiet pursuit of these projects, often found themselves spending hours, not on the work itself, but on a patient, house-wide search for their inexplicably misplaced tools, a recurring frustration that added a subtle layer of weariness to their days. Jack and Janet, in their desire for a comfortable and inviting home, had invested a significant amount of effort and a considerable sum of money into remodeling their bathroom, creating a space of quiet respite to their exact liking. The day after the completion of this painstaking work, they entered to find their new sink and bathtub marred by violent scratches, as if something unseen had attacked the pristine porcelain. These were not mere surface blemishes, rather they were deep gouges, large chunks ripped away from the smooth finish, a shocking sight, particularly as the fixtures had not even been used yet. Then came the stains in their dining room, dark and insistent, seeping through fresh coats of paint, as if an unknown presence behind the walls steadfastly refused to be covered up, its mark a quiet defiance. And then something truly astonishing, seemingly impossible, occurred. One quiet evening in 1974, Jack found himself alone, absorbed in a movie, when, without warning, the television set suddenly burst into flames. It was an intense, almost theatrical conflagration, as if intentionally torched. Jack was left stunned, grappling with the sheer impossibility of the event. The incident left behind approximately $200 in damage, a tangible loss, but more significantly, it left a profound accumulation of questions that resisted easy answers. Other appliances within the duplex soon followed suit, catching fire randomly, without any rational, discernible explanation. Yet, the Smurls, in their quiet determination to rationalize the inexplicable, told themselves that these were merely the workings of an old house settling, attributing the occurrences to plumbing issues, faulty wiring, the predictable imperfections of a dwelling over 3/4 of a century old. It must be said, from a calm retrospective distance, that these events might seem like a growing collection of red flags, quiet warnings of something deeper at play. But then, as if to test the very limits of their rationalizations, Jack's car, his reliable vehicle, unexpectedly went up in flames. This event, unlike the previous domestic incidents, was far more difficult to brush off, more resistant to simple explanations. A new, unsettling question began to quietly assert itself in their minds. What truly was going on here? By early 1975, the subtle disturbances had begun to escalate, quietly yet perceptibly. The couple's daughter, Dawn, a sweet and imaginative girl of just 9 years old, found herself increasingly reluctant to sleep in her own bedroom, often seeking the quiet solace of her parents' room, a sanctuary from her unspoken fears. When gently questioned about her apprehension, Dawn would speak with a child's candidness of people floating around her room, presences that, despite their ethereal nature, deeply scared her. On those nights when Dawn, frightened, would slip into their room, Jack, with a father's protective instinct, would quietly rise and investigate, searching every corner of her room, but he never found anyone, just the quiet stillness of an empty space. A pervasive sense of disquiet was slowly beginning to settle upon everyone in the house. The toilets, in the dead of night, when the entire household lay in the quiet embrace of sleep, would mysteriously flush themselves, a sudden, startling sound in the profound silence. Then came the smell, a truly potent and unwelcome intruder. Early one morning, around 6 o'clock, the kitchen was abruptly filled with the overpowering stench of rotting meat, so intense and pervasive that it caused Janet to gag, a visceral reaction to an unseen malodorous presence. Yet, within 10 minutes, as mysteriously as it had arrived, the smell vanished, leaving behind no trace, as if it had never been there at all. This awful, putrid odor would continue to fade in and out of the home with an unnerving frequency, a fleeting sensory assault. Soon after, heavy, deliberate footsteps began to echo from the attic, a rhythmic thudding that defied the quiet of the house. Jack, ever the pragmatist, would climb up with a flashlight, anticipating the presence of an intruder, or perhaps a raccoon, a more mundane explanation. But each time the attic would reveal itself to be empty, undisturbed, holding only its quiet dust and shadows. One of the most common and persistent occurrences was a distinct banging, a series of sharp, resonant thuds that seemed to emanate from within the very walls of the house. At this point, the quiet collection of anomalies was growing, one after another, each a small, insistent question mark. Even the neighbors, those quiet observers of daily life, began to notice this activity, their ears attuned to the rhythms of the street. One day, Mary Kowalski, a neighbor living a couple of doors down, made a call, her voice tinged with curiosity, to inquire about the sounds she had heard the previous night. Banging, faint voices, strange thuds. But the Smurls, she was told, had been sound asleep, utterly unaware of any disturbance. This peculiar activity, small and unexplainable, continued its steady presence for months, then for years, weaving itself into the fabric of their lives, a quiet thread of the unusual. By 1977, the activity had, by degrees, intensified, and the Smurls experienced a significant, joyful change in their household. That year, Janet gave birth to twin daughters, Shannon and Karen, a beautiful expansion of their family. However, with 4 young children now filling their home, their modest duplex, once comfortably spacious, suddenly felt crowded, brimming with life and the quiet demands of parenthood. Jack, ever the dedicated provider, continued to work long hours, his responsibilities weighing heavily. In the spring, his mother Mary suffered a heart attack and required hospitalization, adding another layer of quiet worry to the family's already considerable burdens. The stress of it all, the emotional and practical demands, was very real, a quiet hum beneath the surface of their daily lives. But what came next was not merely stress. It was something far more enigmatic. Early one morning, Jack and Janet awoke to a strange, almost imperceptible creaking sound. They followed the curious noise downstairs, their footsteps soft in the pre-dawn quiet, until they reached the front door. Opening it, they were met with a sight that defied explanation. Their lawn chairs, placed on the porch, were gently rocking before their very eyes, as if an invisible presence sat upon them. There was no wind, no discernible fan, no rational explanation for this quiet, surreal tableau. Up until this point, the Smurls would sometimes joke, with a nervous lightness, about the house having a ghost, a harmless, almost whimsical notion. But this felt different, more tangible, more insistent. Another early morning around 2 o'clock, the family was jolted awake, not by a physical force, but by a sudden jarring burst of static blaring from radios in the living room. Upon investigation, they discovered that these radios were unplugged, completely disconnected from any power source, their inexplicable outburst a stark contrast to the profound silence of the night. Soon after, cold spots began to manifest in their bedroom, pockets of intensely chilled air, dipping to a startling 45 degrees Fahrenheit despite a fully functioning furnace, so frigid that one could actually see their breath in the dark, a visual manifestation of an invisible chill. And it was around this time that the activity began to escalate beyond the merely disquieting, pushing into the realm of the truly unsettling. Jack later described a particularly horrifying experience. Late one night, he recounted waking to the distinct feeling of a hand, cold, invisible, gently rubbing his arm. He slowly turned over, his mind expecting to find his wife, Janet, but he saw that she was fast asleep beside him, completely undisturbed. The reality of his aloneness in that moment, combined with the inexplicable sensation, left an indelible mark on his quiet composure. Then, in 1978, the voices began, subtle at first, then growing in their eerie clarity. One quiet afternoon, with the house empty of all other occupants, Janet went down to the basement to attend to the laundry. The house was hushed, her children gone for the day, her husband at work, leaving her in a rare moment of quiet solitude to catch up on chores. With laundry basket in hand, she began to place the dirty clothes into the machine, reaching for the detergent, when suddenly she heard a voice, clear and distinct, call out her name from behind her. Janet. She paused, her movements still, her mind grappling with the sound. She knew, with a quiet certainty, that she was home alone. It had to be her imagination, she thought, a trick of the mind in the quiet of the basement. But then she heard it again, a woman's voice softly calling out her name, Janet. She later described it not as a yell, but as an eerie whisper, deeply disturbing, for the voice carried with it a mocking, almost taunting, tone. She began to look around frantically, her eyes scanning the dim corners of the basement, but there was no one in sight, just the cold, dark, empty space. Janet's heart began to race, a quiet tremor of fear. She slowly backed towards the stairs, her instinct urging her towards the safety of the upper floors. Then she heard the voice again, Janet, and then again Janet. The voice continued its insistent calling, her name echoing in the silent basement. In a surge of quiet bravery, Janet finally called out, her voice a little shaky, "What do you want?" Silence. Only the gentle hum of the washing machine broke the stillness. As she began to make her way up the steps, her hand gripping the railing, she heard it once more, Janet. She knew with a certainty that chilled her to the core that she was not imagining this. It was real. She tore up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind her. the sound echoing through the quiet house. Up until this point, the unexplained occurrences in their home, while unsettling, had seemed largely benign, not overtly malicious. But this felt different, sinister, as if the unseen presence derived a quiet enjoyment from her fear, a profound shift in the nature of the haunting. John and Mary, living on the other side of the duplex, were becoming increasingly concerned for Jack and Janet, witnessing the growing stress that the unexplained activity in the house, coupled with the responsibilities of caring for 4 young children, was placing upon them. They often swore they could hear Jack and Janet fighting, their voices raised in what sounded like a loud, tumultuous argument, so intense that the sounds carried clearly through the adjoining wall into their own home. They believed with quiet certainty that the couple was having a truly difficult time hearing so much anger and screaming. One day, as they listened to what sounded like truly vehement shouting between the couple, John and Mary's concern for Janet's well-being reached a tipping point. John, with a quiet resolve, decided it was time to intervene. Then came the first undeniable sighting. A true vision of something no one could logically explain. Janet was again home alone, quietly ironing in the kitchen, when she felt a sudden distinct burst of cold air. She looked up, her gaze drawn to the corner of the room, and there she saw it, a shadowy human-like figure, standing silently watching her. Its outline was undeniably that of a person, yet its form was composed of a shadowy smoke-like substance, indistinct and ethereal. Janet described its face as having no discernible features, a smooth, dark void, frozen in a quiet, primal fear. She found herself staring back at it, utterly motionless. The shadow figure then began to move, slowly, deliberately towards her. It moved closer and closer, its dark mass approaching until it was right in front of her face, mere millimeters away. Then, with an unnerving grace, it moved straight through her, an intangible coldness passing through her very being, before continuing out of the kitchen and into the living room. Janet turned, her eyes following its path, only to see that the shadowy figure had vanished into the quiet expanse of the living room. Deeply terrified, she ran next door to the comforting presence of John and Mary's side of the duplex. She burst inside, finding Mary sitting quietly in a chair. As Janet entered the room, Mary barely acknowledged her presence, her gaze distant. Janet, knowing Mary was still recovering from her heart attack, initially wondered if she simply wasn't feeling well. But it was not that. Mary, her voice hushed, explained that she thought she was losing her mind. Just before Janet had rushed through the door, a black shadowy figure had walked through the wall into their hallway, before quietly disappearing. Mary continued to see these enigmatic shadow figures on numerous occasions, and most strangely, she said it felt as though they were calling to her, attempting to draw her in, a silent, persistent invitation. That foul, putrid smell continued to appear sporadically, spreading its unwelcome presence throughout the house. Jack, with a quiet determination, searched everywhere, meticulously examining every nook and cranny, but they could never locate the source of that rancid odor, its origin remaining a persistent mystery. As is often noted in tales of the paranormal, such a truly horrific smell is frequently associated with activity of a more profound and disturbing nature, a quiet, unsettling omen. The family recounted that there would often be weeks of quiet respite between these intense events. Something startling would happen, leaving the family feeling deeply unnerved, a profound sense of unease settling upon them. But then, a period of peace and quiet would return for a while, enough time for the family to, almost imperceptibly, regain a sense of comfort, to let their guards down, their quiet anxieties slowly receding. The Smurls, despite the unsettling occurrences, stated their firm desire not to move. This was their home, a place where they had poured their lives, where they had quietly built their future, their roots now firmly planted. Yet, the activity continued, its intensity growing month by month, a steady escalation of the inexplicable. One quiet night, Janet found herself in the kitchen with her daughters. One of the girls was preparing for her Holy Communion, a significant and sacred event, and the family was due to leave for church in the next hour. Janet was diligently ironing her daughter's dress for this very special day, when suddenly the girls heard a faint creaking sound, a quiet warning. With remarkable speed, they were able to jump out of the way just as a huge light fixture, suspended above the dining table, came crashing down with a startling sound. Jack inspected the damage, his brow furrowed in quiet puzzlement. It didn't appear that anything was loose. He had no idea how or why it had fallen. Even stranger, the ceiling bore significant damage, looking as if someone or something had violently ripped the fixture from its secure mounting, a display of unseen destructive force. And then, the attacks began. The Smurl house, it seemed, was not merely haunted, it had become profoundly hostile, its unseen occupants shifting from subtle torment to direct assault. Jack was taking a nap one day when Janet and the girls were out shopping, enjoying a rare moment of quiet peace. He drifted off, and later woke to find himself, with a disorienting sensation, floating a few feet off the mattress. He began to move around, an inexplicable levitation, until he suddenly dropped back down onto the bed. The sudden impact a stark return to reality. On another occasion, Janet was inexplicably yanked, pulled off the bed one night by some unseen force. Jack, waking to her terror, tried desperately to pull his wife back, struggling against whatever invisible power was asserting itself, until, finally, it ceased. Immediately after, they smelled that rancid odor, thick and pervasive, and the banging started again, emanating from inside the walls, loud, horrifying thuds that echoed through the night. On yet another morning, Janet awoke with deep scratches marring her arms, 3 long parallel marks, as if made by claws, a chilling physical manifestation of an invisible torment. And their daughter, Dawn, was inexplicably shoved down the stairs, a sudden unseen push. There were no loose floorboards, no one behind her, no earthly explanation. This dark entity in the home seemed to possess a power far greater than previously perceived, now capable of direct attack, of pushing, shoving, and physically harming the family, a chilling escalation. In their growing desperation, the Smurls sought solace and intervention from their faith. They invited 2 priests to their home to bless it on 2 separate occasions, quiet ceremonies of hope and spiritual protection. Each time the intense activity would quiet down for a period, offering a temporary reprieve, a fragile sense of peace. But each time with a cruel predictability, the activity would inevitably pick back up, and unsettlingly, always with increased intensity, growing worse than before. The girls, in hushed tones, would tell their parents of hearing a strange sound in their room, a fluttering, like some sort of creature with wings quietly moving through the air. Jack and Janet themselves observed a strange, smoke-like mist in their bedroom on several occasions, an ephemeral visual manifestation of the unseen. Jack's parents, living on the other side of the duplex, continued to experience and witness activity as well, their peaceful existence also touched by the inexplicable. The entity, in one instance, took the fleeting form of what looked like a person. The girls saw it run into their parents' bedroom, only to vanish into their wardrobe, disappearing into the darkness, a quiet, bewildering illusion. It was just one strange thing after another, a relentless succession of unsettling occurrences. One quiet autumn day, the neighbors again heard screams, chilling and distinct, but when they investigated, they found the Smurl house to be utterly empty. The family was away at church, a detail that added another layer of profound eeriness to the event. This particular incident, involving a neighbor, is especially unsettling. This neighbor, witnessing and hearing strange activity emanating from the Smurl house, and knowing the family wasn't home, picked up the phone. She called the Smurls' house, simply wanting to confirm, to perhaps find a logical explanation. To her shock, a young girl answered. The neighbor, her voice tinged with a quiet apprehension, asked, "Who is this?" The young girl on the other end of the line responded, not with words, but with unsettling laughter, a chilling, prolonged peal of mirth. Finally, the call disconnected. The neighbor, profoundly disturbed, called back, but no one answered. She was horrified when she later confirmed that the Smurls were indeed not home that day. This neighbor had no idea who she had spoken to on the phone, but she did not believe, with a quiet certainty, that it was someone living. By the end of 1985, the family was living in a state of constant pervasive fear. Doors were kept locked at all hours, a desperate attempt to create a barrier against the unseen. Lights were left on throughout the night, pushing back against the encroaching darkness and the unsettling presences it seemed to harbor. It was then, when their quiet resilience was at its breaking point, that they decided to seek help, a desperate reach for understanding and relief. This decision would bring the most famous paranormal investigators in the country to their front door, forever altering the quiet trajectory of their lives. Janet Smurl, her hand perhaps trembling slightly, picked up the phone. On the other end of the line were Ed and Lorraine Warren, names that resonated with profound weight in the realm of the paranormal. Janet had received their contact information from a local professor, someone with a quiet interest in unexplained phenomena, who had gently suggested, "Perhaps they can help you." Ed and Lorraine Warren, a demonologist and a clairvoyant respectively, were undeniably the most famous paranormal investigators of their time, renowned for their recent involvement in the Amityville case, a story that had captured the national imagination. And now these two individuals, with their unique blend of skepticism and belief, were making their way to Chase Street. The connection between the Smurl family and the Warrens was cemented by their shared Catholic faith, a common ground that offered a unique understanding of the spiritual challenges they faced. A few days after their initial conversation with Janet about the relentless activity in the home, Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived at the Smurl residence, bringing with them a small team, a psychic, whose sensitivities would aid in their perceptions, and a photographer, to meticulously document their findings. They came prepared, armed not only with their inherent abilities, but also with the tools of their trade, infrared cameras, to capture the unseen, audio recorders, to preserve the whispers and sounds, and crucifixes, symbols of their faith and spiritual protection. What followed was a period spanning months, encompassing dozens of visits from the Warrens, including numerous overnight stays, and culminating in a detailed account that would soon grip the nation, transforming a private family's torment into a public spectacle. As was their customary practice, the Warrens sat down with the Smurls, listening intently, gathering a comprehensive understanding of the bewildering events unfolding in the home. Lorraine Warren, with her clairvoyant abilities, accompanied by the psychic they had brought, embarked on a tour of the house. As she moved through the rooms, Lorraine reported sensing 4 distinct entities, 4 separate presences, inhabiting the duplex. The first she gently described as an elderly woman, quiet and seemingly confused, possibly a former resident who had passed away in the house, perhaps having suffered from a form of dementia before her passing. In appearance, Lorraine noted, she was unsettling, but Lorraine did not perceive her to be harmful, merely lost. Next, she sensed a young woman, characterized by impalpable anger, a potentially violent and almost insane energy, also lingering within the dwelling. Haunting the place alongside these two was a middle-aged man, who Lorraine believed had died in the home decades ago, his presence infused with a lingering pain. But then, there was something else. A fourth presence, an entity far more sinister, a demon. Lorraine described it as horned, towering, an imposing figure that she believed was in complete control of the other spirits. This demonic entity, she asserted, was focused on the profound destruction of the Smurl family, capable of manipulating and orchestrating the lesser spirits in the home. Lorraine believed that this malevolent presence had likely been on the property for decades, a silent, dormant force, but for some inscrutable reason, it had now begun to actively terrorize the Smurl family. She further articulated that this entity would feed off the family's energy, like a battery, growing more powerful the more they were scared, afraid, or worried, their fear a potent fuel for its malevolence. Ed Warren, a seasoned demonologist, gently explained to the Smurl family the four progressive stages of demonic activity: infestation, oppression, possession, and ultimately, death. He expressed his grave concern, believing that the family was, at this point well into these terrifying stages, a quiet confirmation of their deepest fears. The Warrens' first night in the house was for a time remarkably quiet, a deceptive calm that lasted until around 11 o'clock. Then, they began to witness firsthand what the Smurls had been enduring. Mirrors in the bedroom would inexplicably move, shifting on their own accord. A small, unplugged television set would suddenly illuminate, filling with static. As they watched, they claimed they could discern figures, dark and indistinct, as if staring back at the family through the static-filled screen, a chilling reversal of roles. Ed Warren, with a quiet solemnity, recited a prayer, raised a crucifix, a symbol of protection, and instructed the family to sprinkle holy water around the home whenever there was activity, a simple yet profound act of spiritual defense. The Warrens' primary goal was to meticulously collect as much evidence as they could, tangible proof to present to the local church, hoping to persuade them to perform an exorcism, a ritual of profound spiritual power. The activity, however, continued its relentless escalation. Janet was slapped by an unseen force, a sharp, inexplicable impact. Strange, loud banging sounds persisted, emanating from within the walls, their intensity undiminished. And the family reported that the televisions would continue to spontaneously switch on, their screens filled with static, and the shadowy figures continued to appear, as if watching them, a constant, unsettling surveillance. One night, a particularly harrowing experience unfolded for Janet. She was in the bathtub, seeking a moment of quiet relaxation, when a distinct feeling settled upon her, the unsettling sensation that she was not alone. And then she heard it whistling. She described it as sounding like a group of drunken men, a raucous, out-of-place sound that shattered the peace of her bath. And it was around this time that the haunting truly took a darker, more personal turn. One night, Jack woke up around 2 o'clock in the morning to the distinct sound of two female voices whispering to each other. Half asleep, his mind hazy with slumber, he initially thought it might be Janet or one of his daughters, but when he slowly opened his eyes, he saw with startling clarity two women in old-fashioned dresses standing at the foot of his bed. They remained for a moment, silent and still, before vanishing before his very eyes, dissolving into the darkness. Hours later, he again awoke to the sound of those same women whispering, their voices now much closer, more intimate. He opened his eyes and saw them standing in the corner of the room. One of these women appeared to be in her 40s, the other noticeably younger, perhaps in her late teens or early 20s. They continued their hushed whispering to each other, their conversation unintelligible, until the younger woman slowly turned her head towards Jack, her lips curling into a very unnatural, exaggerated smile, a chilling, unsettling expression that seemed to mock his fear. He tried desperately to wake Janet, elbowing her gently, but she remained deeply asleep, unresponsive. So he lay there, paralyzed, staring at these two silent, smiling women, and they in turn stared directly back at him, their silent gazes unwavering. Jack tried to scream, to cry out, but it was as if no noise would emerge from his throat, his voice trapped within him. The two women were both now smiling at Jack, their unsettling grins fixed, as they continued to whisper to one another, until finally, they began to slowly walk backwards, fading into the profound darkness of the bedroom, disappearing entirely. The Smurls maintained regular contact with the Warrens, recounting each new escalating event. The activity was undeniably becoming much more intense, more personal, more profoundly disturbing. Ed Warren suggested a course of religious provocation, a ritual he believed could compel the demon to reveal itself, to force it into a more overt manifestation. And so they proceeded, and the reports from this period were undeniably terrifying. Ed Warren himself claimed to have been choked to the point of almost losing consciousness by unseen hands, a direct physical assault from an invisible force. One day Jack experienced something so profoundly disturbing, so deeply traumatic, that he would struggle to speak about it for the rest of his life. He was again asleep in bed, when he awoke to an unmistakable presence in the room with him. A foul-smelling, decaying figure appeared, distinctly female in form. By the time he registered her presence, she was already crawling towards him, her eyes red and sunken, her teeth visibly rotting, her hair long and messy, matted. He later described this terrifying woman as a succubus, a demonic entity that, he claimed, physically assaulted him. He recounted the attack as lasting for 10 agonizing minutes, 10 minutes of sheer terror through which he was utterly unable to move, paralyzed by fear and some unseen force. Janet, sleeping beside him, remained completely unaware of the horror unfolding next to her. The woman then disappeared, fading back into the darkness of the bedroom, leaving Jack utterly traumatized. The next day, Jack, with immense difficulty, recounted everything to Janet, who became deeply emotional, struggling to process the horrifying revelation. Their daughter Dawn, soon after, came into the room, and with a child's quiet earnestness, told them she had experienced a horrible nightmare. In her dream she had seen this entity attack her father, a chilling corroboration of Jack's waking terror. Just weeks later, Janet herself would report a similar experience, claiming she, too, was attacked by something she could not see, an invisible malevolent presence. The couple, in their persistent search for help, continued to reach out to their local church, their spiritual community, but it appeared that the church, perhaps overwhelmed or simply unable to comprehend the depth of their claims, did not take the family's assertions seriously. On one particular evening, when the Warrens were visiting the home to investigate, a black shape reportedly began to form in the corner of the room. Ed later stated that it felt as if this shape was specifically watching him, and that it was not alone, suggesting other unseen presences. Another report from the next morning stated that Lorraine entered the upstairs bathroom and discovered 2 words, "Get out," scrawled across the mirror in what appeared to be red lipstick. She swore with absolute certainty that no one in the house, no living soul, could have done it. Over the ensuing months, the Warrens diligently documented their findings. Their audio tapes reportedly captured the unsettling sounds of knocking, faint whispers, and guttural growls. They also claimed to have filmed a dark figure, indistinct and fleeting, crossing a hallway. However, this particular tape mysteriously disappeared. Ed Warren claimed it had been handed over to a television producer and possibly to the Catholic Church, but no one could definitively confirm its whereabouts, leaving its existence in question. Clearly, the local Catholic Church, to whom the Smurls had repeatedly appealed for help, was proving unwilling or unable to provide the comprehensive spiritual intervention the family so desperately needed. So the Warrens, with a quiet determination, decided to proceed on their own. They made arrangements to bring Father Robert F. McKenna, a traditional Catholic priest from Connecticut, to perform an exorcism, a powerful spiritual rite of cleansing and expulsion. The night before Father McKenna's arrival, Jack again awoke to the familiar sound of whispering. The two smiling women, the same figures he had seen previously, were back. But this time they were accompanied by the middle-aged man, the third entity Lorraine had sensed. In the corner of the room they stood, silently watching him. Jack recounted that this man then walked over to the bed, leaned over, his face uncomfortably close to Jack's, and spoke, his voice chillingly clear. "You will pay for this," over and over and over. All the while, the two women continued their hushed whispering and unsettling laughter, a mocking chorus aimed at Jack's terror. The three figures then vanished into the darkness, leaving Jack profoundly shaken. The next day the exorcism was performed, a solemn and intense ritual. What transpired that night terrified the family anew. Loud, violent banging shook the very walls of the house, a concussive force. That unmistakable smell of sulfur and rotting meat returned, stronger and more pervasive than ever before, an assault on the senses. 2 more exorcisms followed, each one offering a temporary fragile relief, a fleeting quiet, but by summer, the shadows were back, the oppressive feeling returned, and the rancid stench reappeared. The house was still not cleansed, still not truly peaceful, and disquietingly, everyone connected to this perplexing case, the Smurls, the Warrens, and even some of their associates, began to report feeling unwell, their health declining, a subtle, yet pervasive wariness. The attacks, too, continued their relentless assault. One day, Jack and Janet were horrified to discover that their 16-year-old daughter, Dawn, had been attacked by the entity, a chilling escalation of the physical torment. It seemed no member of the family was safe, each one continually experiencing unsettling interactions within the home. Jack began to see a new apparition, an animal-like creature, 8 feet tall, an imposing and terrifying vision. And the couple's younger daughter, Shannon, reported seeing a strange man who emanated a foul odor in her bedroom, watching her, a profound invasion of her personal space. At this point, the sheer number of distinct entities reported in this home was truly astonishing, a bewildering collection of presences. No one, it seemed, could escape the hauntings' reach. Even people at Jack's workplace began to report strange occurrences around the office. Phones would mysteriously malfunction, radios would emit strange, eerie noises, disrupting the quiet hum of daily work. And that foul, putrid smell, the same one that plagued the Smurls' home, would occasionally waft through the office whenever Jack was present, as if the haunting had, in some inexplicable way, followed him. The family's health was clearly deteriorating. They were sleep-deprived, constantly tired, their spirits worn thin by the relentless stress. As one might imagine, the public, gradually catching wind of these extraordinary claims, began to take notice. And then came the national spotlight, a sudden blinding glare that transformed their private ordeal into a public spectacle. Word about the Smurl haunting spread, a quiet murmur that rapidly grew into a roar. The family, in a move of profound courage or desperation, chose to share their story with a journalist. And in 1986, everything changed when the Associated Press picked up their account. Suddenly, TV stations and newspapers across the country were all reporting on the Smurl family haunting, their quiet lives thrust into an unprecedented public arena. Within days, Chase Street, once a model of tranquil suburban living, became a veritable circus. Neighbors watched in disbelief as TV crews, documentary filmmakers, and hundreds of curious onlookers crowded the block, transforming their peaceful street into a chaotic hub of activity. CNN arrived, its cameras capturing the unfolding drama. A German film team began interviewing residents, their foreign accents adding to the surreal atmosphere. The intensity of the public intrusion was such that bricks were thrown through the Smurls' windows, a destructive act born of curiosity or malice. Police were eventually forced to barricade the street, attempting to restore some semblance of order amidst the throngs. The Smurl girls would look out to see people climbing trees, craning their necks, attempting to peer into their bedrooms, a profound violation of their privacy. The neighbors who lived in the houses surrounding the Smurls were not only profoundly bothered by the constant presence of the press and the overwhelming crowds on the street, but even more unsettlingly, 6 separate families began to report strange activity within their own homes. They, too, started to hear banging within their walls, to detect unidentifiable bad odors, and to hear the chilling sound of someone screaming in the middle of the night. It was as if the haunting, once confined to the Smurls' duplex, was now quietly spreading, an invisible contagion touching other homes. This raised a profound and unsettling question: was such a spread even possible? Then came the book, the subsequent movie, and the inevitable fallout that accompanied such widespread public exposure. The Smurls signed a deal for a book titled The Haunted, a literary endeavor that some hailed as a brave recounting of their ordeal, while others more cynically viewed it as a form of exploitation. The reviews, when they arrived, were often brutal. Critics asserted that the book lacked sufficient evidence to substantiate its claims, and one reviewer, particularly harsh, dismissed it as a cash grab wrapped in poor writing. In 1991, The Haunted aired as a made-for-television movie, drawing an audience of 10 million viewers. For some, it was a terrifying horror story, a compelling portrayal of a family tormented by unseen forces. But for others, it presented a different narrative, that of a family seemingly chasing attention, their story sensationalized for the masses. As one might expect, not everyone was convinced by the Smurl family's story. Skeptics, with their rational lens, asserted that it was simply a hoax, a ghost story, and not a particularly convincing one at that. Many pointed to Jack Smurl's brain surgery in 1983. Swelling from the procedure, it was noted, had left him with short-term memory loss, a detail that some used to cast doubt on his recollections. Others attributed the family's claims to various earthly pressures: financial strain, Janet's isolation as a stay-at-home mother in a period of intense stress, and Mary Smurl's declining health, all factors that could contribute to heightened emotional states or psychological distress. Robert Gordon, a psychologist, famously characterized the phenomenon as mass hysteria, a modern-day Salem, describing it as sheer delusions under intense pressure. Even the Catholic Church, despite its deep spiritual traditions, remained hesitant to fully embrace the Smurls' claims. Father Joseph Adonio, after blessing the house, stated that he saw nothing out of the ordinary, no overt signs of supernatural presence. Father Alphonsus, troubled, an exorcist who visited, reported finding no definitive signs of demonic activity, only what he perceived as creaky pipes and faulty wiring, mundane explanations for the unsettling sounds. Another priest, who stayed 2 nights in the house in August, also reported nothing unusual, his observations aligning with a more conventional understanding of the events. Then there were the environmental factors. quiet suggestions of natural explanations for some of the phenomena. A nearby sewer line, for instance, had been the subject of numerous complaints from 1975 to 1985, a period that coincided with many of the Smurls' experiences. This could potentially explain the recurring foul smells that permeated the house. Furthermore, a mine subsidence, a geological phenomenon beneath the neighborhood, was documented in geological surveys, and this could plausibly account for some of the inexplicable activity and sounds emanating from the structure, particularly the banging within the walls. However, perhaps the most damaging blow to the credibility of the Smurls' claims, at least in the eyes of many skeptics, came when the family and the Warrens refused to allow independent investigators onto the property. This refusal, for many, signaled an unwillingness to subject their experiences to objective scrutiny. And when Jack Smurl began negotiating with a Hollywood producer just days later, many skeptics concluded that the story, as a true paranormal event, was in their view, effectively over, tainted by the pursuit of profit. Eventually, amidst the swirling controversy and the quiet, persistent terror, a giant prayer night was held at the Smurls' home, a collective act of spiritual solace and support. For the first time in years, the family reported feeling a profound sense of support, and their house, for a fragile period, felt peaceful, as if the spiritual cleansing had taken hold. They reported that weeks passed by with no activity, a quiet reprieve, a breath of normal life. But then, with a cruel inevitability, it began again. Jack was in his bedroom one day when he saw the shadowy figure reappear, a silent harbinger of renewed terror. It was all beginning again, the cycle of fear and uncertainty. The family said they were terrified, their hopes for lasting peace shattered. The haunting picked back up, its intensity undiminished. Eventually, with the financial means provided by the book and movie deals, the family finally had the resources to move, to leave behind the quiet torment of their lives on Chase Street. With a profound sense of